Professor, we once thought, at least I was taught that in school, that once Homo sapiens turns up, we kind of supplant, if not exterminate, Neanderthals. But you told me that they were already on a downhill slope, that they already had like weaker numbers, weaker DNA pool. So is it the other way around now? We had nothing to do with their demise?
I mean, again, it depends who you ask. So I think that it's a combination of features that the Neanderthals disappeared physically, because they didn't disappear completely, because their DNA, as we've said, lives on in us today. But I think it was a combination of features. We've mentioned, yes, their low diversity, but near the end of their time, they perhaps were a threatened species, and it wouldn't have needed much to tip them over the edge. The climate was very unstable. That certainly didn't help them. To have a competing species that turns up that's going to want to, it's going to be hunting, they're going to be hunting the same foods, collecting the same plant resources, wanting to live in the best territories for hunting and gathering, wanting to live in the best cave sites, and so on. So I think there was an economic competition between these two groups. And depending on the local circumstances, at times maybe it favoured the Neanderthals, and at other times it favoured Homo sapiens. But overall, Homo sapiens grew their numbers at the expense of the Neanderthals. And I think there's a clue also even in the interbreeding. So I wrote a paper a couple of years ago with my colleague Lucille Crett, and we argued there that even the interbreeding could have been part of Neanderthal extinction, because there's a strange pattern at the moment in the interbreeding that happened after 50,000 years ago. So we have early Homo sapiens genomes from after 50,000 years ago, and all of them show evidence of recent Neanderthal interbreeding, at least within the previous 5 or 10,000 years, sometimes even within a few generations. We have maybe a dozen Neanderthal genomes from the same time period. None of them show Homo sapiens DNA coming in recently. So that's a strange pattern. It may just be due to low samples of we don't have many Neanderthal genomes, but at the moment, it seems to be a one-way pattern of Neanderthal DNA going into Homo sapiens and not in the other direction. It may be that there simply wasn't interbreeding in both directions, that whatever mating patterns were going on, Homo sapiens, Neanderthal people were joining. They're choosing to join the Homo sapiens groups to interbreed. It may have been even capturing individuals. So some modern primate groups, some modern hunter-gatherer groups, if they run out of females, they will go and steal some from a neighbouring group. So maybe Homo sapiens actually stole Neanderthal females into their group to breed with them.
Wow, fascinating.
But whether it was voluntary or not, this movement of Neanderthal breeding individuals into Homo sapiens means that they're being lost from the Neanderthal breeding pool. And if you haven't got many people, that's very bad news. If you're losing your prime age breeding individuals to this other population, that is going to add to the extinction problem. The numbers are going to shrink, the diversity is going to shrink, because your prime age individuals are going voluntarily or involuntarily to join the breeding pool of another species.
So if I understand you correctly, their demise is due to many complicated factors.
Yes, it is.
Climate change.
Environment, climate change could be certainly part of it. Diseases, of course, brought by Homo sapiens, equally diseases, from Neanderthals and Denisovans. It could go both ways. Some people suggested epidemics, but I don't think that's going to be the explanation, because, and what we've got to do, of course, is account for not only the disappearance of Neanderthals, but of course we mentioned these other humans, the Denisovans. They disappeared too. And there were other human species around in Southeast Asia. They disappeared too. So the common factor, of course, seems to be the spread of Homo sapiens. So that's why I think we're implicated, but it doesn't mean we were hunting these groups to extinction, fighting them and killing them, maybe eating them, make it even worse. I think that it's indirect. It's economic competition. And at times these groups coexisted probably peacefully. Maybe they exchanged partners peacefully. But the long-term pattern was Neanderthal decline and physical extinction.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that image of like all Homo sapiens banding together with a plan to exterminate all Neanderthals was a bit silly to begin with, to be honest.
Yes, I certainly think so. And equally, Homo sapiens are pretty good at doing each other in. We know that. It's not just, killing Neanderthals. Yeah.
Word. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked what you heard, please consider subscribing to Smart Cookies. on YouTube. What else is there? Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And if you really liked what you heard, feel free to become my Patreon. No, my patron on Patreon by going to Patreon and becoming my patron. It's really easy. Just type Smart Cookies Podcast in there. You should be able to find me. Last but not least, I have to thank the absolute legends that are my producers on this show, my existing patrons on Patreon: Aida, Mancian, Miha Medved, Medinho, Gordon, Jurechuk, Lorenzo, Mila, Carmen, Taichi, Goran, and Veronica. Without you guys, this show wouldn't exist. So massive thanks. And yeah, see you in the next episode. Bye.